Hello, my dear listeners. How are you all? I hope you are doing your best. You are giving your best to survive in this pandemic, and we will. We will. So, with this positive thought, with this positive vibe, let's start the next part of the story, The Boy with the Moon on His Forehead. This story is taken from Folktales of Bengal, written by Reverend Lal Bihari Dey, and the first edition of this book was published in the year 1883, and this very book was published in the year 1912. So let's start this next part of the story. But before going into that part, I must say that till now, what we came to know that our king, who already had six queens, still he he opted for a seventh marriage, and where he was just looking for his offspring, nothing else. And after this honeymoon period for his seventh marriage, he went for other parts. He went for his own work as a king and as a ruler, rather, I must say. So in this, he gave a magical bell, so that whenever it is rang by the seventh queen, the new queen, and he will be present there. But out of curiosity, also out of the poking by the six other queens, uh, or other queens, our new queen, she checked, or she tested the authenticity of this magical bell, and king came immediately. Though he was in the he already had covered half a distance from his final spot where he was intended to go, but still this time king warned her that whatever whatever she had done, it is being done, but she shouldn't repeat it. This false alarm shouldn't be repeated. But we will come to know what happened next, whether our new queen again rang the bell for just for the sake of testing, or for the sake of curiosity, or by the constant biting or poking by the six queens, or not, rather than when she got her labor pain. So let's start. Okay, I will read a little bit more from yesterday's part. Okay. When the pains of childbirth come upon you, ring this bell, and I will be with you in a moment, in whatever part of my dominions I may be at the time. Remember, you are to ring the bell only when you feel the pains of childbirth. After saying this, the king started to his journey. The six queens, who had overheard the king, went on the next day to the apartments of the seventh queen and said, "What a nice bell of gold you have got, sister! Where did you get it, and why have you hung it up?" The seventh queen, in her simplicity, said, "The king has given it to me, and if I were to ring it, the king would immediately come to me wherever he might be at the time." "Impossible," said the six queens. "You must have misunderstood the king. Who can believe that this bell can be heard at the distance of hundreds of miles? Besides, if it could be heard, how could the king be able to travel a great distance in the twinkling of an eye? This must be a hoax. If you ring the bell, you will find that what the king said was pure nonsense." The six queens then told her to make a trial. At first, she was unwilling, remembering what the king had told her, but at last she was prevailed upon to ring the bell. The king was at the moment halfway to the capital of his other dominions, but at the ringing of the bell he stopped short in his journey, turned back, and in no time stood in the queen's apartments. Finding the queen going about in her rooms, he asked why she had rung the bell, though her hour had not come. She, without informing the king of the entreaty of the six queens, replied that she rang the bell only to see whether what he had said was true. The king was somewhat indignant, told her distinctly not to ring the bell again till the moment of the coming upon her of the pains of childbirth, and then went away. After the lapse of some weeks, the six queens again begged begged of the seventh queen to make a second trial of the bell. They said to her, "The first time when you rang the bell, the king was only at a short distance from you. It was therefore easy for him to hear the bell and to come to you. But now he has long ago settled in his other capital. Let us see if he will now hear the bell and come to you." She resisted for a long time, but was at last prevailed upon by them to ring the bell. When the sound of the bell reached the king, he was in the court dispensing justice, but when he heard the sound of the bell and no one else heard it, he closed the court and in no time stood in the queen's apartments. Finding that the queen was not about to be confined, he asked her why she had again rung the bell before her hour. She, without saying anything of the importunities of the six queens, replied that she merely made a second trial of the bell. The king became very angry and said to her, "Now listen, since you have called me twice for nothing, let it be known to you that when the throes of childbirth do really come upon you, and you ring the bell ever so lastly, I will not come to you. You must be left to your fate." The king then went away. At last, the day of the seventh queen's deliverance arrived. On first feeling the pains, she rang the golden bell. She waited, but the king did not make his appearance. She rang again with all her might. Still, the king did not make his appearance. The king certainly did hear the sound of the bell, but he did not come, as he was displeased with the queen. When the six queens saw that the king did not come, they went to the seventh queen and told her that it was not customary with the ladies of the palace to be confined in the king's apartments. She must go to a hut near the stables. They then sent for the midwife of the palace and heavily bribed her to make away with the infant the moment it should be born into the world. The seventh queen gave birth to a son who had the moon on his forehead and stars on the palms of his hands, and also to an uncommonly beautiful girl. The midwife had come provided with a couple of newly born pups. She put the pups before the mother, saying, "You have given birth to this," and took away the twin children in an earthen vessel. The queen was quite insensible at the time and did not notice the twins at the time they were carried away. The king, though he was angry with the seventh queen, yet remembering that she was destined to give birth to the heir of his throne, changed his mind and came to see her the next morning. The pups were produced before the king as the offspring of the queen. The king's anger and vexation knew no bounds. He ordered that the seventh queen should be expelled from the palace, that she should be clothed in leather, and that she should be employed in the marketplace to drive away crows and to keep off dogs. Though scarcely able to move, she was driven away from the palace, stripped of her fine robes, clothed in leather, and set to drive away the crows of the marketplace. The midwife, when she put the twins in the earthen vessel, bethought herself of the best way to destroy them. She did not think it proper to throw them into a tank lest they should be discovered the next day. Neither did she think of burying them in the ground, lest they should be dug up by a jackal and exposed to the gaze of people. The best way to make an end of them, she thought, would be to burn them and reduce them to ashes, that no trace might be left of them. But how could she, at that dead hour of night, burn them without some other person helping her? A happy thought struck her. There was a potter on the outskirts of the city who used during the day to mold vessels of clay on his wheel and burn them during the later part of the night. The midwife thought that the best plan would be to put the vessel with the twins along with the unburnt clay vessels which the potter had arranged in order and gone to sleep, expecting to get up late at night and set them on fire. In this way, she thought the twins would be reduced to ashes. She accordingly put the vessel with the twins along with the unburnt clay vessels of the potter and went away. Somehow or other, that night the potter and his wife overslept themselves. It was near the break of day when the potter's wife, awaking out of sleep, roused her husband and said, "Oh, my good man, we have overslept ourselves. It is now near morning, and I much fear it is now too late to set the pots on fire." Hastily unbolting the door of her cottage, she rushed out to the place where the pots were ranged in rows. She could scarcely believe her eyes when she saw that all the pots had been baked and were looking bright red, though neither she nor her husband had applied any fire to them. Wondering at her good luck and not knowing what to make of it, she ran to her husband and said, "Just come and see." The potter came, saw, and wondered. The pots had never before been so well baked. Who could have done this? This could have proceeded only from some god or goddess. Fumbling about the pots, he accidentally upturned one in which, lo and behold, were seen huddled up together two newly born infants of unearthly beauty. The potter said to his wife, "My dear, you must pretend to have given birth to these beautiful children." Accordingly, all arrangements were made, and in due time it was given out that the twins had been born to her. And such lovely twins they were. On the same day, many women of the neighborhood came to see the potter's wife and the twins to which she had given birth, and to offer their congratulations on this unexpected good fortune. As for the potter's wife, she could not be too proud of her pretty children, and said to her admiring friends, "I had hardly hoped to have children at all. But now that the gods have given me these twins, may they receive the blessings of you all and live forever." The twins grew and were strengthened, the brother and sister, when they played about in the fields and lanes, were the admiration of everyone who saw them, and all wondered at the uncommonly good luck of the potter in being blessed with such angelic children. They were about 12 years old when the potter, their reputed father, became dangerously ill. It was evident to all that his sickness would end in death. The potter, perceiving his last end approaching, said to his wife, "My dear, I am going to the way of all the earth, but I am leaving to you enough to live upon. Live on and take care of these children." The woman said to her husband, "I am not going to survive you. Like all good and faithful wives, I am determined to die along with you. You and I will burn together on the same funeral pyre. As for the children, they are old enough to take care of themselves, and you are leaving them enough money." Her friends tried to dissuade her from her purpose, but in vain. The potter died, and as his remains were being burned, his wife, now a widow, threw herself on the pyre and burned herself to death. The boy with the moon on his forehead, by the way, he always kept his head covered with a turban, lest the halo should attract notice. And his sister now broke up the potter's establishment, sold the wheel and the pots and pans, and went to the bazaar in the king's city. The moment they entered the bazaar was lit up on a sudden. The shopkeepers of the bazaar were greatly surprised. So, what we are going to see? Okay, here you can see, we can see, right? The boy who has the moon on his forehead, right? This is a beautiful picture. So let's go back to the story. They thought some divine beings must have entered the place. They looked upon the beautiful boy and his sister with wonder. They begged of them to stay in the bazaar. They built a house for them. When they used to ramble about, they were always followed at a distance by the woman clothed in leather, who was appointed by the king to drive away the crows of the bazaar. By some unaccountable impulse, she used all to hang about the house in which they lived. The boy, in a short time, bought a horse and went a hunting in the neighboring forests. One day, while he was hunting, the king was also hunting in the same forest, and seeing a brother huntsman, the king drew near to him. The king was struck with the beauty of the lad and yearning for him the moment he saw him. As the deer went past, the youth shot an arrow, and the reaction of the force necessary to shoot the arrow made the turban of his head fall off, on which a bright light like that of the moon was seen shining on his forehead. The king saw, and immediately thought of the sun with the moon on his forehead and stars on the palms of his hands, who was to have been born of his seventh queen. The youth, on letting fly the arrow, galloped off, in spite of the earnest entreaty of the king to wait and speak to him. The king went home a sadder man than he came out of it. He became very moody and melancholy. The six queens asked him why he was looking so sad. He told them that he had seen in the woods a lad with the moon on his forehead, which reminded him of the son who was to be born of the seventh queen. The six queens tried to comfort him in the best way they could, but they wondered who the youth could be. Was it possible that the twins were living? Did not the midwife say that she had burnt both the son and the daughter to ashes? Who then could this lad be? The midwife was sent for by the six queens and questioned. She swore that she had seen the twins burnt. As for the lad whom the king had met with, she would soon find out who he was. On making inquiries, the midwife soon found out that two strangers were living in the bazaar in a house which the shopkeepers had built for them. She entered the house and saw the girl only. As the lad had again gone out a shooting, she pretended to be their aunt who had gone away to another part of the country shortly after their birth. She had been searching after them for a long time and was now glad to find them in the king's city near the palace. She greatly admired the beauty of the girl and said to her, "My dear child, you are so beautiful. You require the katki flower properly to set off your beauty. You should tell your brother to plant a row of that flower in this courtyard." I must pardon this the pronunciation of kataki. Actually, it should be keteki. What flower is that, auntie? I never saw it. How could you have seen it, my child? It is not found here. It grows on the other side of the ocean, guarded by 700 Rakshasas. How then, said the girl, will. Okay. This is the aunt and our very beautiful bride, very beautiful girl, I suppose, or the six queens. I think the king and his six queens are there. So let's go back to the story again. How will my brother get it? He may try to get it if you speak to him, replied the woman. The woman made this proposal in the hope that the boy with the moon on his forehead would perish in the attempt to get the flower. So, my dear friends, here we are stopping today. Tomorrow we will read, tomorrow we will dig in what happened next to this twin brother and sister. So, till then, be happy, be safe, and Shubhamastu.